So let me just check till where we completed yesterday. Transfer global settings we saw and units we saw. Okay, today we have to see the characteristics info object. Okay, so characteristic info object is the default radio button ticked chosen whenever you come into RST1. Then if you let us see first let us see one characteristic info object, zero material. Okay, obviously we are seeing zero material. It starts with zero, so it is a standard object. We are just seeing to have a understanding that what is how it looks. Okay, slash ORSD1. Let us see the key figure once. Zero balance. Okay, so the first difference which you should identify between both of them is obviously both are different, but in key figure we have lesser tabs. 3 tabs are there. In characteristic, maximum 6 tabs can be there. It may be less than 6 tabs or not, but it maximum 6 tabs will be there. So
Quick question on key figure.
yes.
So in key figure, I have seen date and time as well. They are also key figures, right?
Yeah, coming to that.
Apart from new.
Yeah, I'll come to
Okay.
that. So
Okay. Thank you.
yeah. So this is the initial point which we identify that characteristic. So many tabs are there, so it means that little more we have to configure. Key figure, it's pretty simple to configure, even though the other tabs are there. It's the first tab is sufficient, your key figure is configured, done. But characteristic, we have to keep in mind many things, then only we can build a characteristic. So if you see a characteristic, again the same stuff. The technical name will be there, long and short description, the versions, these things. Okay. Then in the general tab, let us go tab by tab. First in the general tab, what we are having? We are having something called as a data element, data type, length. Okay. Again, as I told, as we discussed in previous class, also that info object is equivalent to field. Let us see the corresponding field for this and let us confirm whether it is correct or not. So SC11, since it is material related, we can go to MARA table. So here you are seeing the field MATNR. The description is material number. Okay, so this is what is about the field. Okay, what are the properties of the field? You are able to see the field name. You are seeing something called as a data element. You are seeing a data type, length, how many decimal values, description. So this is what you are able to see. So first of all, table will be there. Okay, first of all, domain, there is something called as a domain. There is called as a data element. Then you have a field. Then you make a table. So what I am trying to say is, in order to create a field in R3 site in the table, I just cannot create the field like that. First, I need to have a domain. Using the domain, I need to have a data element. Then only I can have a field. Once I have the field, then only I can insert in a table. So let us see this MATNR. I'm click. Now we are going backwards. Okay, from inside the table we saw the field. From field we are going to the data element. Okay, you can see this is the data element. Then we are having a domain. You can see that in the domain it will be specified what is the data type, the maximum length, decimal places. That's it. So what you can say is the data type and length will be specified in the domain. If you go back, that domain you include to make a data element. So in domain, in data element they are including domain. So obviously that properties like the data type, the length are copied. What further are copied or defined in the data element is what is the description. So this description, whenever you are using this field MATNR, at that place we require a material number description in the R3 side. So that description would be supplied by this field label in the data element. So it's copying the data type and length from the domain and adding the field label. Then once you have that, you include it along with the field saying that this is the property of the field and you are including it in a table. So this is how you are building any table. Okay. We have not built it. This is how it was built. So for our understanding, we have tried, we got to know now that point. Now, what is the data type and length? Data type is char, length is 18. So obviously, if you are sending something, you should receive in the same thing. Like your receiver also should have the same properties, the data type and length. Obviously, corresponding to your field, your info object would be there. Your info object should also have the same property. That is the reason you are seeing for material, the data type is char and length is 18. This again confirms that field is equivalent to info object or info object equivalent to field. Whatever is the property in the field, we should have it in the info object. So always, whenever you are creating a characteristic, okay, always whenever you are creating a characteristic, you need to specify the data type and length. In order to specify that, if you have a source, you should have the same properties as the source. Like if you are creating for this name ERNAME, NAM, it should be char and 12. Like this, if you have it in the R3 tables, you can directly have it. Or if you have it in the file, like your data type and length should always be decided based on your source, whether it is a file or an R3 one. So for this, the data type can be, we'll talk about data type, but the length can be 4. For this, the length can be 4. So like this, based on your source, your data type and length should be there. Okay, that is one point. Further, we are having lowercase. Lowercase means by default system will accept, BW system will accept only upper characteristics, uppercase letters for anything. If you do not specify anything, obviously it expects an uppercase. By mistake, if you are sending a lowercase or a mix of a lowercase and uppercase, that means that if any lowercase letter is there and you do not have this tick mark, system will throw an error. So when you are dealing with certain lowercase things or a mix of lower and uppercase, you need to have this tick mark so that system accepts those values also. And we have something called as a conversion routine. Conversion routine MATN1. Output length is 18. The reason why we are having conversion routine is again going back your date, your material number domain had conversion routine and output length. Since it is designed like that, obviously your corresponding BI info object should also be designed in the same way. Further, what is a conversion routine? Okay, so we have something called as an internal format and an external format. So internal format is how the system is storing internally. Let us say the calendar date is storing as YYYMMDD. External format, I can give it in any way. MM/DD/YY or MM.DD.YY. Anyway, there are many other possibilities also. DD-MM-YY. Depending upon our flexibility, how we are comfortable with, we can maintain that values. So the people are storing the data in that format. But whatever you store, whichever format, while going internally, while storing internally, it will convert to the internal format. We should. So to make that conversion from external to internal, it is not compulsory that I should store every time in internal format only. I can store in any of the external format, but the value should convert into internal format. To convert that, we have this conversion routine. Okay, so if you click on this, you will see the list of all the conversion routines available. The most common one is alpha. Alpha is nothing but add leading zeros. Okay, so what are we saying? Let us say the length is 18 for material. Okay, so obviously we can store a maximum of 18 this. So if I am storing as 15767, it internally it will store in 18, right? So that is the length internally specified also. So internally how it will store is all the leading zeros will be added and 1567 would be stored. So to make this conversion so that the complete length would be fulfilled internally, we have this alpha conversion routine which adds the leading zeros while storing internally. Likewise, this MATN1 purpose is also the similar one, but it is specific to the material area, so they are using MATN1. We could have used alpha also. Further in R3 side they are using MATN1, so in BI also they are using the same thing. So that is one of the conversion routine. Other conversion routines, idate. So for date we are having rsdat, sdate, and idate. So whenever you are storing, you're about to load in an external format, you need to specify a conversion routine so that based on this routine, it gets converted into internal format. So let us see this. We are telling that conversion routine converts, but what is actually backend happening? If you double click on that, you can see that it is a function module. Function module is nothing but a reusable logic, reuse, reusable code. So if you if you click on display, you can see the code. That is a standard code given by SAP. Based on that code only the conversion happens. Okay, this is the code which is being,
This is on the R3 side, correct?
yeah, anywhere. When you are using the conversion routine in BI side also, a corresponding function module would be used and it will be converted.
Got it.
So we are seeing this thing, conversion exit. The naming convention would be conversion exit underscore this name. Okay, this is the name, matn1 or anything, and input we will be having, and one more thing would be output. The reason is why we are having input and output is input will convert external to internal. Okay, when we are fetching the values again through a report, internally this would be the value. If you display this thing to the user, it is confusing, so many leading zeros. So when fetching from internal, it should convert to external. So return process. So that would be worked upon by this conversion exit output. So for each conversion routine, you will have input and output. You can see C for sdate. Let us see for sdate. Give a date 11.11.2012. Execute. Specify a valid date. I might not have given it a correct thing. You can see this is how we are entering, we are loading, it gets converted. And let us see the other exit. It would be output. So give the value. So from when we are fetching from internally, it will get converted to external format. So this is about the conversion routine. So just keep in mind that whenever you are not supplying in the internal format, that is whenever you are supplying in an external format, you need to have the conversion routine. Otherwise, you cannot store the value. This is doing your work of conversion. Okay. Further, how many data types we are able to see? Char, numc, dats, tims. For key figure, how many we saw? 6. Amount, quantity, number, integer, date and time. So what you are able to see, the date and time, and these things are common over here. You would be having a doubt that I am having data type as a key figure as well as a characteristic. So in which case should I use that? Okay. Likewise, the number also we may be having a doubt. So let us clarify all those things now. So char, what are we able to see? The description, characteristic, string. String means it can take anything. Like characteristics, string means like specifically characteristic string. Alphanumeric. Okay, so it can be A2, B3 and special characters as well. So whenever you have this combination, you have an alphabet, numeric, or if you have a special characteristic, your data type should be char. Next one is numc, characteristic string with only digits. So only 1, 2, 3, 4 like this, numbers only. This one, date field stored as a fixed length of 8, time stored as a fixed length of 6. 6. Okay, so this is what we are able to see. Now, what doubt you will have is, if I am having number, you can either make it as a char or a numc. Because char can take numbers, alphanumerics, only alphabets, all of them, right? So it depends. If you have numbers, you can make it as a char or numc. If you have alphabets and numbers, make it as a char. Date and time, you have date and time. Okay. Further, if we go back to our definition, if you read our definition, key figure, anything which is quantifiable, measurable, and based on which calculations can be done. Right, this is the definition based on which I can define a key figure. Now, just tell me that if we are having employee ID, employee name, age. So employee ID 1, employee name ABC, age is 34. Employee name. Okay. So in this case, what are your characteristics and key figures? Obviously, I can say that age can be an attribute. It would give additional information related to the employees, like how many employees are over certain age that they can find using this age. Further, if they want to do some calculations like find the average age of the employee, the minimum age, maximum age of the employee. So those things are nothing but doing some calculations based on which calculations can be done. So when you are doing some calculations on the age, that is your requirement. Like in that case, what you would do is age would be a key figure so that you can do the calculations. If you are just displaying it as an additional property, extra information for the employee, then age would be a characteristic. So always you should decide that if any calculations can be are performed, it would be key figure. So in that case, what we can do is now, since I said that our requirement involves calculating age, average age, so it should be number or integer. Number means decimal values can also be given. Integer means whole number, the complete value. Okay. So it depends whether if you are dealing with some things which are can be specified in decimal points, you use number. If you are dealing with whole numbers, like mostly the age would be whole number, average age. Might be the end result would be like you have to decide based on that and take it as a number or integer. So those cases I'll use key figure, number or integer. If it is only as an additional property, I would make it as a numc. So depends upon the situation. Likewise, if I have a project start date, project end date. So like this I am having project start date and end date. They are giving additional informations like which employees are working on a project, what are the project dates. If you want to calculate further the duration, the difference between start date and end date, that is nothing but calculations. If that involves calculations, obviously it would be a key figure of type date. Likewise, if you have project start date and end date, just additional properties, you would make it as a date over DATS. Start time, end time can also be mentioned. So start time, end time. So that also again additionally it gives informations, or if you are doing some finding out average time due average hours spent by the employee, so you need to calculate the difference between start and end time. So that would be key figure TI type. If it is just an additional property, it would be characteristic TIMS. So you have to decide whether you are doing some calculations or not. Further, these calculations can be performed may be performed in transformation level or reporting level. That means that two places I can perform the calculations. That is, like if I want to find average age, transformation level, store the calculated value in info provider. That is, while loading the data into the target, I have a field in the target called average age. I can do the, no, not this thing. Not only this thing, any things which we want to calculate during this loading period itself, I do it in the transformation level. I- Further, sometimes what happens is, like let us say we have this created date, changed date. So in purchase orders, like when we are having some purchase orders, we'll be having the created date and changed date. So those things can be stored as normal dates only, characteristic dates. The difference user might want created on minus changed on. This can be achieved, this user wants only in the reporting area, reporting level. So if he wants it on the reporting level, no problem. I can still have it as a characteristic only. At the reporting level, I have certain things using which I can do even calculations on the characteristics. Okay, it's not compulsory that whenever you are having any calculations, you need to store it as a key figure. That calculations, we might get to know about that thing maybe at a later stage. If you are aware of that in the initial stage, then you can keep it as a character key figure. If the requirement arises at a later stage, no problem. We can still achieve that using certain other concepts in the reporting. Okay. Further, what happens is you just hold on to this point. We'll come back to this point and I'll further explain that where they will directly take it as a key figure if it is involved, or where they will leave it as a characteristic and later on use it in the reporting area. So for understanding that, I have to tell you about attribute. Okay, so let us start creating a characteristic. So Z purchase, choose characteristic, choose the info object, click on create. Purchase order. Because these things are not very straightforward, they are depending upon scenarios. So many scenarios would be there. Depending upon the scenario, you have to act. So that's the reason now we have given a description. If you see this box, it is having a box and a tick mark. If you want to navigate to another thing, it won't allow, because fill in all the required boxes, all the fields. That kind of box which we saw, box and a tick mark, it is a mandatory. So wherever you have this mandatory things, you have to enter, then only you can proceed. Otherwise you cannot proceed. That's the reason. If you see while creating, if I don't give the description over here also, no problem. It will still allow me to pass through because it is not a mandatory box. I can give the description inside also. But mandatory box, we should give it. So purchase order, obviously it would be of a data type char. because each company would have a certain purchase order. It might not be 123 purchase order, might not be 123. Their company name would be there, MB 123 like this, or I for 123, something of that sort. Let us give it as 10. Okay. There are other tabs over here. If you go to the master data tab, what are you seeing first? From the outside, you are seeing a square box. This means that there is this master data text availability. For hierarchy, there is no box, so nothing is available. For compounding, nothing is available. For master data and text, that property is ticked. So if you go inside that box, you can see that master data and text are ticked. So by default, whenever you are creating a characteristic, these option will be ticked with master data and with text. So what it means is, with master data, if I remove this, attribute tab is going. If I keep with master data, attribute tab is coming. This means that I can add attributes to this and further load data to this. I mean to say that with master database, attributes can be added to purchase order and data can be directly loaded to purchase order as a target. So instead of an info cube or any other thing, whenever we are dealing with master data, we can directly load it to the characteristic info object itself. Okay, so your info provider for master data would be the characteristic info object. But you would be able to load data only if you have this option with attributes. Without attributes, no meaning. You cannot load data. You cannot load attribute related data. Okay. You can still have like this also. Purchase order. But if your design is like this without master data and without text, you cannot store anything directly into this purchase order. You cannot load making purchase order as a target. In order to load master data, making purchase order as a target, to load attributes, you need to have this. To load text, you need to have this. Okay. So what we can say is, for master data, I have different targets. The targets would be the characteristic, info provider. Nothing but your characteristic itself is having this tick box and it is acting as a info provider target. For transaction data, I can load it into an info cube or a DSO. So this is how we choose a targets. Whenever we are having master data, I can load it into characteristic info provider. Nothing but the info object itself is acting as a target. Where we are having transaction data, we can load it into a cube or a DSO. Further, I can load it into a DSO also, but not suggestible, not use. We can load it, but it is not giving that benefits, not suggestible. So you can just remember that master data, characteristic info provider, transaction data, this. Just to show you an example, it would be 0 material underscore ATTR, 0 material underscore TEXT. Let me go to the R3 side. What we discussed in initial demo and other classes is that I need a data source while modeling, I need a data source, I need a target. If the data source is a master data, like let us say this, zero material ATTR. It is a master data. You can see logistics master data. If the data source is a master data, this is nothing but it is supplying all the attributes to which I can load zero material ATTR. I can load it into zero material. My target would be my info object itself. How am I able to load it into info object? If you see this zero material, so many fields will be there. Around 40, 50 or maybe more than that fields will be there. So all the attributes, meaning the main information, material number, along with that additional, what is the material group, material type, all those things are supplied by this data source. So for this, I am using material info object as the target. The reason why I can use that as the target is, if you see zero material, first of all, it is having with master data with text. So that's the reason I can have attributes and text. I can load the text. Further, I am specifying all the attributes in this. So whatever I am getting in the data source, apart from the main value, apart from material number, I will be having so many things in this data source. So many fields. Material type you can see, volume unit, volume, division, material group, net weight, material type. You can see this, how your object is designed. Weight, division, material group, material type, volume, volume unit. So what all you are getting as the fields in the data source, they all are added as attributes, and since it is capable to store master data and text, I can use it as a target and load it. So that's what we say, that whenever we have master data, characteristic itself is the target. Only if it has this
Arvind, I have a
tick
question.
box. Yes.
Did you show a one-to-one mapping?
I have not yet shown.
Was that a one-to-one mapping of the fields from the master data into this?
No, no. It's not a one-to-one mapping. What I am that one-to-one mapping would be shown during the transformation. Okay, let me show it. But what I am saying is, how can this zero material able to store data? The first point is, it is having these options. Further, it is what all we are getting. We are getting so many fields, but we are loading it into zero material. So many fields we are loading into zero material means how we are able to achieve by keeping those other fields as attributes, since they are giving additional information.
So quick question here.
Yeah, let us see this zero material transformation, and then we can understand that what happens. So if you see the zero material, this is a target. You can see under info provider, this is there. What it is having? It is having attributes, text and hierarchies. The reason why it is having attributes, text and hierarchies is attributes and text because this tick mark is there. Hierarchies because this tick mark is there. Only because the tick marks are there, I am able to load the data. So attributes, how I will load the attributes data from zero material ATTR. You can see from zero material ATTR I can load the attributes. What happens is, okay, not this, just a second. If you see that diagram, you will understand. Then we'll come back to Imran's question. Okay. Okay. What I wanted to show you is, let us say this is our source. When I am creating a transformation, what would be my target? Target would be an info object and the name would be zero material. So my source is having so many fields, but I am loading it into only one object. But that object in turn contains many attributes. Okay, so that's the reason what happens is, you can see left side is all the fields from the data source. Right side, even though I am adding only one as the target, zero material, but it has so many attributes. So all those also will be listed. So that's how, since they are listed, we can do the mapping and further we can load the data. So is it clear, Sharma? This was you were asking?
And okay, so I see that. So is this automatic, or is it somebody I have to write that transformation under
No, no.
it?
We have predefined, like predefined objects, we have predefined transformations as well, or we can manually do it.
Oh, okay, fine.
So Imran, what was your question?
So if you go back,
Yes.
unmuted. Okay. So if you go back to that R3 table,
Okay.
when you are defining the data type, so that data type is defined on that info of that object. So you have this attribute. So zero material.
Yes.
If you can go to that screen where you have these attributes, you remember zero material where you were showing the characteristics and numeric and blah,
Okay.
those data types.
1 second. So this is what you are asking in BW side,
Yeah, so
or
if you go to journal tab,
yeah. Okay. Right.
no, on the source side, journal.
Yes.
So we are not specifying data type for each attribute, correct? It is more like on the object level, what type of data this whole object
No,
can
no,
contain.
no, no,
That object may have more attributes.
no, 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 not like that.
Correct?
Not like that. If you see, what happens
Okay.
is, let us take an example of material type. What is it? Char and 4. If you see over here, it has an attribute of material type. Let us go down to that. So, okay. What is the type? Same, char and 4. So corresponding to each field, you have an info object in BW. This is a separate thing by itself. But to make an more sense, or since we are loading attribute to material, in order to load attribute to material, I need to have, because from my source My data source is having material type. When I have to load that into material, I need to have that as an attribute in zero material. That's the reason we are having zero material type as an attribute to zero material.
Yeah, it's a little confusing. Like the actual data is stored in the attribute, correct? Like the kind of the object itself is a logical container. So why do we need to define a data type? This is material type. I'm talking about zero material. On zero material, why do we need to define it?
Okay, the reason is,
Like if you take an example of a table we don't specify what table is. It's just a field, and we specify the data type for the fields.
no, what is happening over here is, if you notice, what is the source and target we are giving in the transformation? I am giving the target as zero material. When I am, in spite of giving as a single object, what am I getting in the transformation? The whole list. Why am I getting the whole list? Because they all are the corresponding attributes, right? Just because they are the attributes we are getting. So this, I am not loading only to the zero material. My source is having zero, my data source is having material number, along with that so many other attributes. My target also has material and so many attributes. So whatever material number I am loading into my zero material this thing, that individual object, that should match the material number property in the source. Whatever I am loading material type, that should match the material type property in the source. Just we are combining.
Yeah, that I got, but you are defining a type on zero material, not on the material type or material number.
Yeah, it's not that all the source values I'm storing in zero material, right? They are going to individual places. Only the zero material only the material number is being stored in material. The rest are going to their respective info objects.
Okay.
What you are, I got to understand that, yeah. What you are saying is, so many different data types are coming from source. Around 40-50 fields are there. How can you generalize it as a char and 18? That is what you are saying, right?
Yeah, like I was just taking a simple table example, right? So we define data type on field.
But this is a different concept, Imran. So I hope you understood the concept, how they are achieving.
That's what I was trying to get to.
Is it clear now?
Yeah, but that's what I was trying to get to. Like zero material. Like what is zero material? It's just a material number, and for material number we need to identify the data type. If it's a number,
yeah, correct.
It's a characteristic, then I can get it. Like okay, it's okay.
So I could have only stored material number in this zero material, but since my data involves, my source involves so many attributes, I added attributes. Otherwise, if my source is only a material, if my source doesn't have any attributes, my target would be zero material only. Okay, if you see this file.
I got it.
Yeah, got it right. If you are having attributes, you add attributes to that and you load it. If you are not having, that itself would be the target. Okay. Just let me know if you have any other, like if someone else has any questions.
Yeah, I have a question again.
Yes.
So basically, that zero when you use as attribute, that you're interchanging that with the info objects. Am I right? Attributes are nothing but info objects again.
Yeah, they are separate by themselves. Like material type is a separate thing by themselves. We are just adding it over here.
Right. So given that, like in ECC side, we have this table called Mara, where we have zero material and then corresponding fields. Those are linked to the zero material.
Yes.
So on the BW side, we have, when you define zero material, that basically since it is a predefined, those attributes are coming along with the zero material or whatever the number. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's not that they are coming, it's because like it is a standard object and they have designed it in such a way.
Right. They define it and they link it together. Is that right?
Uh,
Can I say that?
they have not
If it
linked it.
predefined.
Yeah, uh, we can say that uh, it is not linked. What we can say is the data source what we might get like zero material attribute ATTR,
Uh-huh.
it
Uh-huh.
might
Uh-huh.
contain all these fields. So since it might contain all these fields, they are including all of them as the attributes. Maximum this many
Okay.
things I can get along with my data source. So they are making it ready to have all those things in the attributes. It's not that a linking is done.
Okay.
It's just that so many things are possible as an attribute data source. That's why they are adding it to the main object.
Okay. I'm not using link as more like in a BW sense. Basically, in the table,
Yeah,
when you declare a column and then declare 10 other columns, in that row they're going along. Like if I have an employee code 101 and there is an employee name, there is a whatever it is, in my case Sunil,
yeah,
and then whatever the place that I'm living. Basically, in that row, that 101 has been associated with the name Sunil and associated with the place that I'm living in. In that sense, they're all going together.
yeah,
So in zero material case, that the info object zero material have these other attributes which are nothing but again info objects. They're all together. So since it is predefined, when you choose zero material as one of your the info provider where you wanted to store zero the MARA, which is a master data into there,
yeah,
those other attributes coming, so that if you want to pull that information to BW, we can do that.
yeah,
Is that correct?
yeah, perfect.
Is that did I understand it correctly?
Yeah, perfect.
Okay.
Yeah, and the data is stored in the tables anyway. So we know that these are the columns and
Yeah,
what are the data type for those, right? Because in the backend there's Oracle or whatever system
yeah,
is there. They are
yeah.
storing the data in a table.
Yeah, everything backend tables only is happening. So even though from our view we are seeing it like this, we are designing it like this, but backend everything is happening in the form
Right.
of tables.
Right. Right. So it's some okay. Got it.
Okay. So further,
Even one question there.
yeah.
So you showed a standard mapping, you said. How many different types of such mappings are there, and what do they depend on? Are they like depending on the industry that you're trying to do this for, or what?
Like uh, basically transformation is nothing but changing the value. Like whatever you require in the source, your in the target in BW, in which format you want that source data you are transforming and storing it into BW. While loading, the transformation happens. Like
Oh,
uh, like let us say we are getting material number as 111. If you want to add a prefix like SISC 111, so the company says that I'm having different things. Even though material number is coming like this, I need to store it with a prefix in BW. So this is nothing but one kind of transforming of data. So while loading, during the loading, this transformation logic should work and this prefix should be added. Like this, whatever target wise, however, whichever way you want to store, those kind of transformations are possible. So basically you are transforming data. So if you see this, what is the rule type? It is a direct assignment. It means that pure one-to-one mapping.
there's no change.
Yeah,
Okay.
obviously the data is flowing as it is. Likewise, we are having
Mm-hmm.
several other things. If you go into rule details, we are having many rule types. We can have a formula. So let us say
Okay.
I am having product and uh, uh, quantity and price. I can get revenue, nothing but it is a product of quantity and price. Revenue by itself is not there in the source, but I am having individually the quantity and the price, so I can find out revenue as quantity into the price. So that thing I can achieve by a formula. Like this, different things are there. If it is a more complex logic, I can write it as using an ABAP code in a routine. So these
Okay.
are the different transformations available.
But if you're making a formula, you're actually making a new field, right? Pretty much a new object to
Yeah, correct.
get
So
that. Okay.
yeah, in that case, what would happen is that field is not there on your source, but it is there on your right hand side.
Right.
So
So you have to make one and then
yeah, because
some kind of a
yeah, what you would do is like let us see for this, even though it might not be correct, let us understand what it happens. So let us say some quantity and price is there. Corresponding quantity and price you will have. So you will do quantity to quantity, price to price. But additionally, what you want, the revenue. So revenue would be the one more field over here that you won't be having in the left hand side. What you would do some mapping and you would put it as a
Oh, I
formula
see.
like this.
So
You
you
would
do,
do,
okay.
and
Yeah.
the rule detail would be a formula.
Okay.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
that's
this is how
nice.
it would. Yeah, it would be like this.
Thanks.
Okay.
So, so you do this transformation to target your target DSO or info queue.
Any
Like, what is
target.
the best practice?
Nothing like anywhere, whichever way, even while storing master data also, when your target is a characteristic info object, you can do the transfer anywhere when you are, because the source data might be in the raw format. Your BW might require another format. Obviously, whatever format you are storing, it might not be the same in BW. BW is more oriented towards reporting. So in order to cater to your reporting requirement, whichever way you want to store, you can transform that accordingly. The target can be anything.
Okay, so if I recall a previous video, we will have a PSA which will have the same data as a source.
Yeah,
Then we
correct.
have a DSO where we do cleansing, and if we need additional fields or
Yeah,
and then we load it to queue.
yes,
So what I was trying to understand, if I need to do A/B comparison between an info queue and DSO,
yes.
so where should I normally do the transformation? I mean, I can do transformation from a DSO to queue, but as a best practice, should we do transformation from PSA to DSO so
No,
that we make sure that data
no,
is transformed, we can see it, and then we load them to a
no,
queue
no.
which will be a pass through?
No. In that case, when we discuss that PSA to DSO, then to cube, at that moment we were discussing in the sense that this is making as a secondary storage, so that since the PSA will be, even though it is a temporary storage, it would be uh, emptied every 10 days. After 10 days, or let us say after 1 month, if there is any data discrepancy in the cube, if I have a same copy in
Okay,
the
got it.
DSO, I can pull it to the above layer. So that's, so it should be untransformed from PSA to DSO. It should be
Okay,
transformed from DSO to Q.
okay, got it.
Okay, so this is about the attributes and how we load. So whenever we have this, as I told, it would be, the data source would be like this for characteristic info provider, zero material ATTR for attributes, text for the text, and zero material and underscore something and underscore HEIR. So if you see over here, so zero material ATTR for material attributes, 0 material text for material text. What will text contain? Obviously, the language description and material, corresponding material number, which language they have stored, and what is the description. Text every time it would be very simple. That object, language, description. This description can be short, medium, long. So in this only short is there. You might have two additional things, but not more than these 5. Hierarchy, as I told, material underscore something and then the hierarchy, like this. Okay. Even for other thing, for customer ATTR we are getting customer text, customer hierarchy. So you need to remember these symbols, like this is for attributes, master data attributes. This Christmas tree is for hierarchies. This is for text. So by seeing this symbol only, you should be in a position to identify, rather than if you just see the naming convention, that is also sufficient, or if you see the description symbol, that is also good. Uh, Other than that, if you see, this is the symbol for transaction data. That was the those were the symbols for master data. This is the symbol for transaction data. So transaction data is a separate symbol. You can see all of them at one place now. This is for transaction, text, attributes, hierarchies. Just get yourself used to the symbols as well. Okay, so if I am loading at hierarchy, obviously my here it should have hierarchy tick mark. If you see, for material, how many we are getting? Hierarchy, attribute and text. The reason why we are getting 3 things is 0 material is having all the 3. From here itself I can see boxes are there, all 3 are there. Further for clarification you can go see with hierarchies are there. With master data means obviously attributes. With texts are also there. So that's the reason what you are finding hierarchies, attributes, text. Why you, because you wanted to load hierarchies, you made a tick mark in the hierarchy box. Because you made a tick mark, you are able to see this over here so that you can load. That is the link. If you don't have a tick mark, you won't see it over here and you will be unable to load. So you should decide which you want. Are you loading hierarchies or not? In your case, if you are not getting any hierarchies, just leave it like that. Whatever you are getting, if you are getting mass attributes and text, take it. If no text, leave it like that. So if you see, we are designing something, purchase order. I wanted to explain you that created date, change date, and when we should use it as a key figure or characteristic. So coming back to that point, when we are creating, you see that text table, automatically it has displayed /BIC /T and the info object name. If you double click, it won't be available, but the name has been given now itself. But for the master datas, no names are there as of now. It is inactive, no names are there. Even over here, there is something called as an SID table. This is also not having any names. If you, even for hierarchy, if you had some hierarchies, no tables are there. If you activate, at this moment, corresponding tables are generated in the backend. So now for hierarchies table got generated, for master data tables got generated, the SID table also got generated. Since the tables got generated after activating, now you are in a position to load the data into this. That's the reason it can act as a target also. If you see the text table, naming convention, it is important for us to understand which tables it is going and sitting in the backend, so that in case of inconsistency, I can go to the table and understand.
In between tables, in between what you're doing in the UI and tables, there is application layer as well, right?
Yeah.
So there will be a logic in that application layer as well.
No, that is in the application layer, everything would be calculated and then it will be brought out. The
Okay, so
calculations you can think that it is done in the application layer.
okay,
All
so
the
my question
processing
is
of
each
data
and every.
would be
Okay,
done.
so what what I was trying to understand is each and every field or object which I'm seeing here is stored in a table, or no? The application layer does translate, do something, and then store them in the table or other,
Yeah,
in
correct.
some format.
So it's two way. From here, when we are doing using the application layer, it goes and stores into the table. When we are pulling it from the table, it goes through the application layer and comes over here.
Okay.
It's an intermediate thing. All the calculations and transitions will happen, but ultimately it's stored in the database.
Okay, each and every field which I'm seeing here, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Further, we are saying we are seeing this. Okay, if you see this uh, text table, the slash BIC slash T, this is the info object name. If you now see it, the table will be able to open. So because the table got generated after activation, we are able to see three things to this: the main object, the purchase order, the language, and the short description. The reason why I am having like that, because I have kept it as language dependent and short text. If I remove language dependent and make it as long text and activate again, now the table structure would be adjusted. If you see, only this thing is there. So depending not only on what you keep with text, means the text will be enabled, but further what you want. As I was saying, in a text data source, if you are getting all the three, generally in text data source you get only the short text. If you want all the three, if your user view wishes to see all the three, then depends like that. Okay, further, if it is language dependent, different language, different people can enter, Chinese, Japanese, so all those you can see it. Further, you are able to see something as text or time dependent. Activate. Whenever you are changing any property, you are activating, you will see a warning message. With warning message, you can continue forward, but it is just saying something. You can read this by clicking on question mark. It is saying that all the texts are deleted in activation must be converted after the activation if it contains data. So data will be lost and conversion will happen. So that is the warning it is saying, because structure is changing, so all the data will be lost. Since we don't have any data now, we can do all these things. But in a real world, that is what they say is, you have it everything ready, then only you start the development. All the properties should be defined in the beforehand only. Whether you want attributes or text, whether it is type dependent, then only you start creating an object. If the object is in use, like in the production box, if it is in use, and after 1 year you tell that I want time dependent text, again you have to delete data or load data, all those headaches. And chances of data loss is also there if you do not store it as a backup and do the conversion. Okay, now you see it is time dependent. So whenever we have time dependent, we have this date to and date from. So this is about the time dependent stuff. So you are saying this, you are seeing that the structure is changing, but what you need to understand is the primary key. Primary key is nothing but which is unique and not zero. So obviously the purchase order is the primary key. So that should be unique value. In this table, all unique purchase orders related text would be stored. And since it is time dependent, the date too would also be added as a combination for primary key. Okay, I hope you know the concept of primary key. Primary key is nothing but, let us say I am loading 1001, purchase order 1001, text is XYZ company, purchase order 1002, 1001, text is ABC. Let us just remove this time dependent to remove confusion so that you can understand what is primary key. So now your structure is in such a way that you just store the corresponding purchase order and the short text. So your primary key is purchase order. So what happens? This is the first thing which you loaded into the table, or you loaded into that zero material text. Using that you loaded this one. Can I load anything with a similar 1001 purchase order and ABC? No, the purchase order is the primary key. It should be unique. So only one value should be there. So what happens when you already have a value? You cannot store another one with the same primary key. It should be overwritten. So what happens? Finally, this one will be overwritten by this thing. because of the primary key concept. You just need to understand that whichever is the primary key, that value should be having unique entry. Multiple entries of that thing is not possible. That is about the primary key. Okay, so I will stop with this. We'll continue tomorrow.
Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. So
Arun, I have a question.
yes.
When we selected with master data,
Yes.
that we are seeing attributes. So we know that what attribute being selected or what attributes I can transfer the data from ECC. But what about text and hierarchy? What are those attributes and where that information going into what info objects? Is there only one info object or
No, for
what
this
exactly is
text,
that?
and hierarchy, corresponding tables it is getting stored.
Okay. So they're not actually in the info objects? Is
Yeah,
that what you're saying?
yeah. Not like what I mean to say is the hierarchy would be as per material. Only for individual
Okay.
object you have a hierarchy. If it is a sales representative, it would be sales representative hierarchy. If it is a region wise hierarchy. If it is material wise hierarchy. So it is an individual thing which would be stored in the corresponding table for that info object.
Yeah, so where that attributes came from? Is it came from the zero material or in this purchase order, or it comes from somewhere else? Like that grouping when you define.
Uh, no, what will happen is when we are talking about this purchase order, what is the purchasing division, what is the purchase group, those things if you want to add, you can add it to make it more meaningful. Purchasing group and purchasing division, it's just that you are enabling this option so that you can store attributes. It's not that you compulsory store attributes, you can store attributes. That is what we are saying.
Okay, but those attributes come from where?
uh, Now again, depending upon the source, like from the master data purchase order attribute data source, whatever is your data source, attribute data source, those attributes should be included in the attributes. If it is for
Okay,
customer,
got it.
got it right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So based, like if anything, you just keep in mind anything that we are designing based on our source. Our data type is based on our source, our length is based on our source, our attributes based on our source. What you are getting, you have to know that so that you can design the object. Everything is based on source. You are having text, you have to receive text, so that's why we are having text. If we don't have text, you don't have this option. If you don't have hierarchy, no need to have it. That's what. Okay with this point?
I mean, I'm still confused with what you said about hierarchies, that if it is, why some of those master data are stored as an info objects, whereas hierarchies are not?
Yeah, okay. Uh, just let me understand your question. What you are asking is, when I am loading attribute data, I am giving so many attributes over here, list of fields.
Right.
But when I am loading
Those are again
hierarchy,
nothing but info objects.
yeah, correct. But when
Right.
I am loading hierarchy, why I am not giving so many fields here? You are saying?
Right. Right.
The reason is, if you see the data source, let me open the data source. It is because of your source only, because if you see zero customer, is my, let us take about zero customer or zero material, anything. To make it, okay, just see, let us see this once. Okay, let us go back to our material. So what I am trying to say is, for attributes, you are getting a list of fields. In order to store the list of fields, you are adding them as attributes. Okay.
Okay.
But when you
I
are
got that.
doing, but when you are loading hierarchy, you are not getting that list of field. You are always having an hierarchy on the material level. If you are talking about hierarchy for material, that would be only on the material level, not on the material group or any other thing. It's irrelevant
Okay.
of other things. For that particular
Okay.
object, you will be having hierarchy. That's the reason. If you have a
Got it.
region, if
Got
you
it.
have
Okay.
something as a region, for region info object separately, you will have hierarchy.
Okay.
If
Can
it
you
is
open
says,
that table's hierarchy?
yeah, hierarchy, what happens is, we have to define it. In this hierarchy, nothing would be specified.
Yeah.
Okay.
So then you need to add those attributes, right?
No, this is a it is a different procedure for loading hierarchy. It's not like the normal thing that you are getting from the source and you have to design it. We have to manually design or load the hierarchies. But just keep in mind that the hierarchy would be for the main object, not for all of them. It is
Okay.
individual for each.
Okay. Yeah. I got it.
Okay. So to make it more meaningful for you, what I can say is, let us say I am having material, zero material is my info object. This attribute is 0 MATL underscore GROUP material group. I can have this attribute, right? A material group as an attribute to
Right.
material. So
Right.
they can store hierarchy based on material numbers, based on material groups. They can store
Right.
on many things. So in that case, you will load hierarchies to material if you are dealing with material hierarchies. If you are dealing with
Okay.
material group hierarchy, your target would be material group separately.
Okay. So this
So
is basically one-to-one relation between
yeah,
the with the primary object versus the hierarchy.
yes, correct.
Okay. All right. I think I got it.
Yeah. So any further questions or shall we stop?
Is there any class tomorrow?
Yeah, it's there. Are you all available?
Uh, I am.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm also available.
Yeah, I will be.
Okay. Okay, right. So
Same time tomorrow?
yeah, same time.